Hey everyone, this is Mukesh Utwani once again from learn-animation.com. Today in this lecture we are going to talk about how you can write your first script in WebDriverIO. Okay, so in the last lecture we have already configured installed WebDriverIO in our system, right? And we have the moment you install WebDriverIO, by default you will get some page objects and spec file, which is just a sample test that we have already seen, right? So in the last session we just executed just to make sure everything is working fine. But today we will write everything from the scratch. We'll write a basic test and we will run it. And once we move ahead, we will be also talking about how you can create your own page objects, and we'll create everything again from the scratch. So today I'm going to delete these files because we are not going to use this. Okay. But before I delete this file, I want to show you a very important part here. So if I go back to official documentation, so this is the getting started page that we discussed yesterday. Now if you come down here, you can see we have some sync mode versus async mode. Okay, so if I open this link, there's a very important, I will say, notice here. See, right now WebDriverIO supports two mode, okay, sync mode and async mode. But if you notice, this sync mode will not be supported anymore starting from node version 16. Okay, so right now we are using 14, but in upcoming releases of WebDriverIO, the sync mode will not be supported. Again, a very important part, that if you are starting a fresh project with WebDriverIO, then we recommend you not to use sync mode anymore. Okay, the reason, as I mentioned, this sync mode will not be supported in the upcoming releases. Okay, so right now it will work for sure. Okay, but definitely it will not support in the future releases. So if you are starting from the scratch, then yes, you have to go with async mode. And in case if you're already having a project which is running, or so till the sync mode is working, it's okay. But in future, if this is not getting supported, then yes, you have to move from sync mode to async mode. Okay, so again, there's a discussion going on, okay, the transition plan, how they can handle the situation. So if you're interested, please read out this link. They have already discussed what's going on behind the scenes. Okay, so in simple note, in future only async mode will be supported, but today in this video we'll talk about sync mode, because until it is working we will use it, but once it will start, definitely we'll go with async mode. But I will show you in the both ways. Okay, there's not major changes, but yes, you should understand how sync mode works and how async mode works. So today this video will talk about sync mode. In the next video we'll talk about async mode. Okay, so please read out this documentation. There are a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and yeah, if you can propose something, it's good. Now in order to get started, okay, and one more thing, if you see the default example or the template which we got from WebDriverIO, they are already giving all these examples using async mode. So you can see we have async, and for each statement we have something called await. So don't worry if you're not able to understand this, I will be covering in the next videos. But all the I will say the page objects that you will see here, okay, you can see we are using await, and if you go to the secure page also, you will see the same thing. Okay, here we are not doing anything, so it's okay. So in simple notes, async mode will be supported in future, sync mode will be removed. So now I can delete this because I don't need this, so I will delete this. And if you don't want this page objects, you can delete it, because anyways we will be creating everything from the scratch. So let's go to test specs, and I'm going to create a new file, and this file I will give as first test.js. okay, now I will be using something called Mocha. Okay, so if you open package.json file, you'll find we have by default Mocha framework with WebDriverIO. And in case if you're new to Mocha, then don't worry, we will be talking about Mocha a lot, but for the time being I want to show you Mocha official website. So you can see this mochajs.org. so in simple terms, it's a testing framework. Okay, so basically Mocha will allow you to organize your test, execute your test. Okay, and if you come down here, you can see we have different features of Mocha. Again, so you can see we have reporting part, we can execute the test in parallel mode, right? And you can see we have retry support and a lot of features from Mocha. So we'll discuss about Mocha in upcoming videos, but today in this video let's talk about how you can get started. So the moment you start, you need to use something called describe. Okay, the moment you type DES, you can see we are getting something called describe here. The moment I click, okay, so I want to show you a very important part here. The moment I type D and control space, okay, you can see we have autocomplete feature now, right? That the moment I type describe, it is giving you a small snippet. Now how it is coming, for this you need to install one plugin. So if you come down to extension, you can search something called Mocha, and you will find one extension called Mocha snippet. This is optional, but yeah, good to have. The moment you install this snippet plugin, it will give you some code snippets. You don't have to write everything from the scratch. It will just give you auto suggestion. Select that from the auto suggestions, and yeah, it will be done. Okay, but if you're a beginner, I would highly recommend you to write everything from the scratch. But once you become, little expert in this, then you can just take the help of auto suggestions. For the time being, stick to writing this one by one. So I will delete, and let me just type describe. Okay, so if you ask me what is describe, okay, the moment you type describe, okay, first let me complete this, then I will talk about what is describe. So if you see this, it will ask you two arguments. One is the string, which is the title of this, I will say, suite, and the second is the callback function. Okay, so callback function, so I can just write function and parenthesis, open and close. So the moment you say describe is a simple way to group your test. Okay, so suppose if you have 10 tests, 20 tests, 30 tests, if you want to group them, you will keep inside describe. So you can give any name here. For the time being, I will just give verify, or let's say smoke test. Okay, nothing else, just a smoke test. And the moment to come here, now you need to use something called it. Okay, the moment I type it, okay, now it was for auto completion, but I will go from the scratch, pair of parentheses, and again first is the title of the test, and the second is the callback function. Again, function, pair of parentheses, curly brackets, start and close. Now basically what is it? It is going to represent one test case. Okay, so one it block will represent one test case. So if I have multiple, this is another test, this is another test. Okay, describe a way to group your test or organize your test, and each it will be considered as a single test case. Okay, so let me just write verify URL. This is my first test. Second is verify title. Okay, and maybe let me just say verify login section, anything. I'm just writing some dummy test. Okay, we'll write the body inside it, don't worry. Now you will also see if you just go with the autocomplete feature, okay, just type it. So you can see we also have anonymous function, right? So you can go ahead with that also, anonymous function with arrow. So since we are just starting and I don't want to confuse you with arrow functions, anyways, it's very straightforward, but this looks pretty straightforward, that the first is the title, then is a function. Inside describe you can have n number of tests. I'm having 3 tests as of now. Now in this example, I'm talking about web automation. Okay, so definitely we need a browser. So the moment I type browser, you can see we are getting something called browser. Now what is browser here? So browser, this is basically an object, okay, that will control the browser. So which browser? So in the last session we have already seen that by default starts Chrome browsers. So as of now this will only deal with Chrome, but once you move it, we will also see how to work with Firefox, Edge browser and so on. So this is just an object which will control the browser. The moment I type, okay, you can see now we have many things that we can use. So basically these are your properties, and then we have so many methods. So I'm going to use one of the method called, so basically it's a property. The moment I pass any URL, it will start that URL. Okay, so if I just open and let me show you this application, which is Orange application, Orange HRM application. So it is basically going to start one application, which is Orange HRM. Now let me do one thing. Let me remove this for the time being. I will keep it somewhat here. Okay. Yeah. So now let me run this. The moment I want to run, again, as we have seen how to run, let's go back. In order to run, we will just type npx WebDriverIO run and this config file. Now how it will identify that I need to run first test.js. So now if the moment you run this config.js file, if you come up here, just a second, just keep on scrolling. Yeah, so you can see here we have something called specs here, right? So by default it is going to navigate to this test directory, then this spec directory, and it is going to run all the file which is ending with .js. So in our case right now we just have one file, right? First test.js. So it is going to pick that file and it will run. So the moment I run this config file, it will find only one and it will run. For the time being, just run this and it should just start the browser, and it should start this URL, which is open source demo orange HRM. Okay, and you will see it will open orange HRM, and yes, here we go, and it will simply close it. Okay, because we are not doing anything, so it is just starting and closing. So now if you come here, you can see we have something called a smoke test, because that's what we have defined here, and then we have only one test, which is verify URL, right? We have not verified anything, but yeah, for the time being, just keep some name. And let me show you some more capabilities, and once you understand this browser object, then we'll move ahead. Now let me type browser again, and let me call session ID. Okay, so you can see we have something called session ID of the current session. So let me print these values. Again, I will be using console.logs because we want to print this. Okay, and I will say session ID is, and I will just paste here. In the same way, if you want all the capabilities of the current browser, again type console.log, and I will say capabilities. Then again browser. See, I'm not interacting with web element as of now, I'm just dealing with the browser object. And now let's call something called capabilities. So it will give you all the capabilities, and let me also print something called command. Okay, commands list, this type browser dot, we have something called command list. Okay, so we don't have that now, so it's okay. Let's run these two properties. At least one is session IDs and second is the capabilities. But let me check what else we have. Browser dot, just a second, capabilities we have used. Okay, we have something called config as well. So I will show you how this config works. Okay, but for the time being, let's run these two commands, and let's run this. Okay, so it started. Now again it will start and close, but at the console log we will be able to see the session ID and the capabilities as well. That's what we are requesting as of now. Okay, now let's search this, which is session ID. So I will just press Ctrl F, and you can see we got something called session ID, right? So session, okay, not this one, because this is the reporter part which is coming. Let's find out. Yeah, we just added this, right? Session ID is, so it says session ID is, and this is the session ID. It means the current session which is running. Then we requested I need the capabilities, so you can see capabilities, and these are the capabilities which we are getting. So basically it accepts insecure certificate, browser name, which version we are using, and the Chrome driver version, and all these capabilities of the current browser. So before we move to the next step, let's also talk about the config part. So if you talk about, guys, this WebDriverIO, okay, webdriverio.config.js. So it's a configuration file, right? So if you want to take any value from this configuration file, now you can use browser.config. Okay, so let me do one thing. Let me add one of the property and let's try to access this. So anyways, we have base URL. If you want the base URL, wait for timeout. So I'm going to add one custom property. Okay, so I will just say, let's say trainer name and use colon, and now you can give the value. Again, it can be any value and just give comma. Okay, it can be numbers, it can be boolean, it can be string. I'm just giving a string. So now let's say if I want to access this guy inside my test, how we can do this? Now we will be using call. Okay, let me first of all write console.log, and I will say trainer name is again browser.config, and which property I'm looking for? I'm looking for a property called trainer name. So in this case, it should give me Mukesh. Okay, so if I just go ahead and run, it should give me these details. So let it run. In the meanwhile, let's quickly see how we can verify the URL. That is what our test is meant for. So if you open any web application, right, this is a URL. So suppose you have a validation that you want to verify the URL. Okay, it could be you just want to verify the partial URL or the complete URL. So in our case, I will just verify whether this particular application, does it contain open source in the URL? If yes, then I will pass my test, otherwise I will fail my test. Okay, now how do we do this? Now okay, now it has been executed. So let me show you the result first. Okay, can you see this? Trainer name is Mukesh. How it is getting? It is taking basically from this configuration file. Yeah, I hope you got the how this browser object works and how you can get the details. As of now, I'm not removing it. Maybe I will just add a comment so that you will have something for reference. And now, how do we verify the URL? Go to the APIs part, and now you can see we have something called expect. Okay, so you can see we have so many things for expect, right? So default options, then we have browser matches. This is what we need as of now. To have URL, to have URL containing, to have title, and to have title containing. This is related to browser. And then we have something called element matches. As the name says, basically it will work with the web elements. So you can see to be displayed, to exist, to be present, and so on. We'll come back to this again once we start dealing with web elements. As of now, this is what I need to have URL containing. The moment I click on it, now you can see the very easy syntax. Okay, we have to use expect. We need to pass the browser object. Then we will call to have URL containing and what exactly we are looking for. Okay, so let's copy this part. Okay, in case if you are a beginner, please write everything from the scratch. I will say type everything, don't copy paste. Just to save your time, I'm just doing copy paste. So in my case, I'm expecting open source. Okay, inside the URL, I'm expecting open source, and this will pass. Okay, but let me do one thing. Let me search for Mukesh, and definitely it will fail. This is what we want. And let's see how this failed test look like. So I will just run this. It should fail, and in the next example I will change this to open source. So this is URL containing. Okay, but if you want to have the exact match, you can just go ahead and use to have URL. To have URL will look for the exact match, but to have URL containing, as the name says, it will just check the partial URL. Okay, in a similar way, you also have methods for to have title and to have title containing. So in the next example, we will just use this. Again, this is also very straightforward. So our test is running basically, and it should fail immediately. Okay, you can see the browser is up and running. Okay, so it failed here. Yes, 0 passed, 1 failed. If you just come here, it says expected was Mukesh, right? This was expected, but actually received is this, so it failed. So you will see here failure of verify URL. So if I just go back and change it to open source, it should work now. Clear? So if you are looking for the exact match, please go ahead and use to have URL. In the next example, I will be using to have title. So if you want, you can do the copy paste, but again, let me run this and I will say this time verify title. Okay, and again I'm using function and curly braces open and close, and again I will be using browser dot URL. Again I will pass this. Now I will go back and just check to have title. So this time guys, I will use to have title because I want to verify the exact title, but if you want to match the partial title, go ahead with this. So I will just call this, which is to have title. So again I will use something called expect, and I will pass the browser dot to have title, and what title I'm looking for. Let's say the moment you open this, can you see this title called orange HRM? And if you just want to see here, the moment you right click view page source, you will find under head section. Okay, the moment you open this head section, can you see this title? This is the same title which comes here. So I will use to have title orange HRM. So in my case, both will pass. Okay, this is also will pass, this will also pass, but if you want, you can fail this. Now let's do one thing. Anyways, we'll have a detailed discussion how to interact with web element, but at least let me log in this time so that at least you can see how we can interact with the web element. Okay, and we'll talk about web elements again in detail. We'll also talk about the different selectors that you can use. So for this, I will create one more test. Okay, let me copy this time just to save some time, and this time I will say verify login. Okay, let me make it verify title, and let me also make this as verify URL. Now definitely I need this. If you want, you can remove this, otherwise you can have multiple expect in one test. Now I want to interact with this web element, so the moment I right click inspect, okay, I will get all the properties. For the time being, I will just use CSS guys. Okay, but once we move ahead, we will talk about how we can deal with different locators. For the time being, I can see we have something called ID. So I will go ahead and write one CSS that this is the tag. Okay, then we are looking for ID equal to this. Now how do we interact with web elements? You need to use something called dollar symbol, and you can see we have single dollar and double dollar. So when you have list of web elements, then you will go with double dollar, and if you're using just $1, it means you're finding a single web element. Okay, now I will be using double quotes, and I will be using called hash, and this is the ID. Okay, if you just want to cross verify, just press Ctrl F here, hash and text username. So you can see the first one is this, so this is the second one. First one is hidden, and basically the second one is this, which is getting highlighted, right? If you want to be more precise, just type input. Okay, then we'll use ID, then equal to, and in single quotes I'm passing this, so you can see it's highlighting one matching node. Now if you're new to CSS, then I have a dedicated video on this. I will share in the description. Please go ahead and watch. Now this will basically find my web element. Now if I have to add any value, I will use something called set value. Okay, and here I will just type in double quotes the username, which is admin in my case. In a similar way, if I have to deal with this password, again I have name, I have ID, I have autocomplete. This time let me take ID as txt password. You can see it's highlighting, right? I will copy this. Again I will use something called dollar, then in double quotes I will pass the CSS selector, and I will just say set value again. Set value is basically for type, value is admin 1 2 3, and finally we need to click also, right? So if I just go and log in, you can see we have ID again. I can use value also, so let's take value, So instead of id, let me just give value equal to login. As you can see, it's highlighting. Now I will just give in double quotes, okay, and this time I will say click. Okay, that's all. And now again let's use this, okay, which is called to have URL containing. Why? Because the moment I log in, if I log in successfully, you will notice I will get something called dashboard in the URL, right? So let's go ahead and see. So again we will use this part, okay, because just now we have seen how to verify the partial URL. So I will copy this part, okay. Again, if you are a beginner, please start writing one by one. I'm just copy pasting just to save your time. So if login is successful, I should be getting dashboard, okay. If dashboard is done, it means login is done successfully. So we'll remove this and keep dashboard here. So basically now we have 3 tests, okay. So the first is verify the URL, which will pass. Second is verify title, which will pass again because we are expecting same. And then we are doing verify login, which will start the browser, verify the title, input username, password, it will click and it will verify. So before we run this, okay, it's you can see it's showing error, right? You can see this red symbol and here also, because it should be it, not if, okay. Same thing I will do here, it should be it. Now let's run this and let's verify the output. So basically it should run 3 tests. So you can see test is starting now. Yes, here we go. So it is in my second monitor. Let me drag and drop here. So as of now I've done maximize manually. So you can see it entered admin username password and it logged in. It should verify dashboard and done. So finally we have 3 tests, okay, verify URL, verify title and verify login. So if I want to fail this, I will just say, let's say orange HRM1, and definitely now 2 will pass and 1 will fail. So that's how it will work. So if you just want, let's run it once again and we know the output. So you can see how easy it is to run. So right now again, before we end this video, I want to highlight we are using sync mode. So in the next example, I will change the same script into async mode so that you can understand how you can have this transition in future. If this is going from sync mode to async mode, how you can move your script from sync to async mode. Fine. So you can see 0 passed, 1 failed. So basically if any of the test is failing here, so it's making complete that describe is failed, okay. So that's the reason it says spec file 0 passed, 1 failed. But inside the spec file we have basically 3 tests. 1 is passed, sorry, 1 is getting failed and 2 are getting passed. The one which is failing, you can see it is giving you that expected was orange HRM1, right, which is this guy. Actual received is orange HRM. So it will also give you what is mismatching. That's a good thing. That's all for this video, guys. In case if you are new to this channel, then make sure you subscribe this channel, share with your friends, colleagues, teammates, and if you face any issue, let me know in the comment section or via email, and I will see you in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.